What's up? Welcome back to neonmushroom. I'm Adrian. Welcome back if you've been here before. Any of you caught the last video, you know that Calvin edited and kind of just presented the entire video, so hopefully you guys enjoyed that, because he's actually going to be responsible for about half of this channel's video output in the foreseeable future, at least as far as gameplay footage goes. And like he alluded to in his video, there's a lot more in the works. So hopefully you guys liked what he had to present. We're trying different things. We're just making the videos in like slightly different ways. So if you guys have a way that you prefer, or you see something in his video that you like better, or you see something like in my video that you like better, just let us know, because we're going to try to find that midway point between our editing styles to present the best possible EDH gameplay. Anyway, today we have another EDH Commander gameplay video for you guys, and it's going to be, well, I'm not going to tell you what the decks are because we do that in the opening hand screen, but I will tell you that I think, is this the one that Guy returns? Yeah, Guy's back. He hasn't been on the channel in a hot minute, but Guy's going to be back playing his Chulane deck. So, with that spoiler out of the way, let's go and take a look at what decks everyone's going to be playing, who's playing them, and their opening hands. Okay, first up we have Guy playing his Chulane Teller of Tales deck. He'll be keeping a 7-card hand with Survival of the Fittest, Aven Mind Sensor, Mirror Entity, Command Tower, Arid Mesa, Hollowed Fountain, and a basic island. And I will be playing my Gavi Nest Warden Cycling Matters deck. I'll be keeping 7 cards with Island, Sacred Foundry, Steam Vents, Bag of Holding, Vidalcan Aether Mage, Escape Protocol, and an Astral Drift. Next up we have Calvin playing his Edgar Markov deck, keeping a risky one-lander with a Mana Confluence, a Chrome Mox, Arcane Signet, a Captivating Vampire, an Indulging Patrician, an Elenda the Dusk Rose, and a Sorin Solemn Visitor. And if you thought the one-lander was risky, Ajdin's going to be playing my Akiri Fearless Voyager deck. He keeps a no-lander with Chrome Mox, Mox Opal, Thought Vessel, Giver of Runes, Pure Still Paladin, Leanin Shikari, and a Sword of the Animist. Guy rolled boxcars, so he's going to draw a card and lead on Hollowed Fountain tapped and pass the turn to me. I'll draw my card for turn and shock in Sacred Foundry. I'll tap it for a mana and play Bag of Holding. With nothing else, we'll move over to Calvin's turn. He'll draw, he'll deploy that Mana Confluence he had in his opening hand, and then I'll play Chrome Mox, imprinting the Indulging Patrician underneath it so it taps for black and white. He'll lose a life to Mana Confluence, tap 2, and he'll play Arcane Signet. After that point, he has no more actions, and we'll pass the turn over to Ajdin. Ajdin will draw a card, and he gets really lucky here. He's going to play Chrome Mox, imprinting the Shikari. He'll play Plains as his land for turn, which he had to have top-decked. Then he'll play the Thought Vessel. Now he's going to play Mox Opal, and he has Metalcraft, so he can drop his Giver of Runes. With nothing else, we pass the turn over to Guy. After all of that fast mana generation, all Guy's going to do is draw a card and play Command Tower as his land for turn, passing the turn over to me. I'll draw my card, then I'm going to play Sulphur Falls as my land for turn. I'll continue to curve out and play Escape Protocol. After that, we'll pass the turn back over to Calvin, who will on-tap and draw a card for turn. He didn't find his land drop, so I'll tap 3, losing 1 to Mana Confluence, and cast Maverin Fane, Desk Apostle. And that will trigger his commander, he'll make a vampire, and we'll pass the turn back over to Ajdin. Ajdin's going to tap for white and play Pure Steel Paladin. Keep in mind, Metalcraft is currently active, so when he casts this Sword of the Animist, he's going to draw a card off of the Pure Steel, and then he'll be able to equip it for free to the Giver of Runes. He'll get in the red zone and attack Guy for 2, and before damage, he's going to go ahead and trigger that sword, getting a basic mountain into play tapped. He'll bring Guy down to 38, and before he can pass the turn, Guy's going to cast Worldly Tutor. He's going to look through his library and get a copy of Reclamation Sage. He'll add that to his hand, and then we'll move over to Guy's turn. Now, on the third turn cycle, Guy will on-tap and draw his card for turn, and then he's going to go ahead and play a basic island as his land for turn. He'll play that Reclamation Sage, and he's going to go ahead and hit the Sword of the Animist, so Ajdin can't keep making land drops. After that, I'll pass the turn to me. I'll just draw, and I'll follow suit with my own island. Then I'll continue to curve out, and I'm going to go ahead and play Astral Drift. With nothing else, I'm going to pass the turn over to Calvin. Calvin will on-tap and draw his card for turn, and then he's actually going to tap out again, losing another life to the Mana Confluence, to play Captivating Vampire. This resolves, and that does trigger Edgar. He'll make another vampire token. At that point, he's going to attack Ajdin for 3, and since he attacked with a vampire, his Maverin will trigger, and he will get a lifelink vampire into play. After that, Ajdin will lose 3, and we'll pass to Ajdin's turn. Ajdin is again going to tap for white, this time for a Knight of the White Orchid. Continuing to ramp in his non-green deck, he's going to get a basic Plains into play untapped, then he'll play a basic Mountain as his land for turn. After that, he's going to tap 3 to play his commander, Akiri, Fearless Voyager, and he's going to decide to get into the red zone. He's going to attack me for 2 with Pure Steel Paladin, and with nothing else, he'll pass the turn to Guy. Guy will play Ancient Tomb as his land for turn, tapping out for Chulane, losing 2 life, and then I'll pass the turn to me, and then I do have a question for Guy at this point. Say I were to start using my Astral Drift, I can do Reclamation Sage. When I do that, can you not point it at my permanents?
Agreed.
After getting clearance from Guy, I'll play Command Tower as my land for turn. Then I'm going to tap 1 to cycle Boon of the Wishgiver. This will trigger my Astral Drift, and I will choose to target the Reclamation Sage. With that, I'll draw a card because I did cycle, and then we're going to move to my end step. Guy's going to let that Reclamation Sage re-enter the battlefield, and he's going to hit the Mox Opal. Ajdin will tap for white but not use it, and will pass over to Calvin's turn. After Calvin draws a card, he simply requests to read Chulane, Teller of Tales. Keep in mind Calvin does have a Captivating Vampire in play. After giving it a quick read, he passes it back to Guy and just decides to pass the turn with no game actions. Ajdin's going to untap and draw a card, then he's going to tap for 3 mana, 2 white, and a colorless. He'll play Skyclave Apparition and try to target my Astral Drift. I do have a quick response. I'm going to go ahead and Wizard Cycle my Vedalken Aethermage, and then I'm going to use the Astral Drift to target Guy's Reclamation Sage. The Reclamation Sage is going to go on a little trip, and then I will put my Drift underneath the Apparition. After that point, I'll finish resolving my Wizard Cycling, and I'm going to go get Riel the Everwise. Calvin's got to read it really quick, and then I'll add that to my hand. After that point, Ajdin's going to get into the red zone with Pierce Steel Paladin, Knight of the Wood Orchid, and Akiri. He's going to attack me with all of them. Now, before we can pass the turn, Ajdin's going to steal Chulane, and then we're going to pass the turn over to Guy, but before that happens, Reclamation Sage re-enters, and he does hit Calvin's Chrome Mox. Guy will draw a card for turn, then he's going to play Forbidden Orchard as his land for turn. After that point, he's going to tap for 2 mana, and he's going to play Survival of the Fittest. With no other game actions, he'll pass the turn to me. I'm going to untap all my lands and draw a card for turn. I'll shock in a Steam Vents as my land for turn. Now I'm going to tap 5 mana, and I'll play Gavi, my commander. Now that I have a free cycle, I'll cycle Countervailing Winds, and this will trigger Gavi, so I'll make a Dino Cat, and I will draw a card. After that point, I have no further game actions, and we'll pass the turn to Calvin. After drawing his card for turn, he's going to tap 2, including the Mana Confluence, so he does drop down to 36, to play Talisman of Hierarchy. Then he's going to activate his Captivating Vampire to take my Gavi. I should have seen this coming. I'm going to go ahead and cycle for free beforehand to draw a card and put another card underneath my Bag of Holding. After that point, Calvin attacks me for 3 with Chulane. I do decide to ask Guy for a Spirit. He provides it, and then I will block. Now, in combat, Guy's going to use that green mana he generated, and he's actually going to wind up using the Survival of the Fittest. This is after Calvin generates his Lifelink Vampire off of Mavrin. Guy's going to go ahead and search his library for a Brazen Borrower, and he'll add that to his hand. Now that he's finished up with that, we're going to pass the turn back to Ajdin. We'll untap all his permanents and draw a card for turn. Then he's going to play Pillar Verge Pathway as his land for turn, and he's going to get straight into the red zone and attack me with a 3/3 and a 2/2. Guy's going to lose 2 and tap his Ancient Tomb to Brazen Borrower back the Chulane. I will take the damage, and then we're going to move over to Guy's turn. Moving into the 6th turn cycle, Guy's going to keep a nice low profile and play Arid Mace as his land for turn and pass to me. I'm just going to drop Blasted Landscape tapped as my land for turn, then I'll tap for 2 mana, and I'm going to play Impact Tremors. With nothing else, we'll move over to Calvin's turn. Somehow still in this game with 3 mana sources, he's going to play his 4th mana source, Command Tower, as his land for turn. He'll tap 4, losing a life, and try to cast Elenda the Dusk Rose. I do have a response. I'm going to tap 3 and Complicate it. The Complicate's going to resolve, but he will trigger Edgar and get a Vampire token. Calvin's going to head to the red zone and attack me for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and this will trigger his Mavrin. Now I have no blocks, and he has 2 lifelink tokens, so he's going to gain 4. I'm going to take 7, and then we'll pass the turn back to Ajdin. Ajdin will untap all his permanents and draw a card for turn, and he's going to play Marsh Flats as his land for turn. Then he's going to get into the red zone and attack me with Akiri, Knight of the Wood Orchid, and the Skyclave Apparition. Before we go to blocks, Guy's going to fetch and go down to 33. Then I'll shock in Temple Garden and go down to 31. Then he's going to tap some mana, including his Ancient Tomb, to go to 29, and he'll flash in Brazen Borrower. When the Brazen Borrower enters, he's going to tap out and use Chord of Calling for 2. That's going to generate a token, and he'll give that to me. The Chord of Calling is going to have him searching his library for a 3-drop. He's going to get Spellseeker, and when that enters the battlefield, it'll go find Cyclonic Rift. After that, I'll remember that my Impact Tremors deals 1 to everybody because I had a creature enter. Before blocks, Calvin's going to steal my 2/2, and then I'm going to go to blocks. I am going to block Akiri and take 4. With no other actions, we'll pass the turn to Guy, who draws, plays Prismatic Vista, and once again passes the turn to me. I'll draw my card and play Basic Mountain as my land for turn, and with not much else to do, I'm going to tap 4 and crack my Bag of Holding. After that, I'll add all those cards under Bag of Holding to my hand and pass the turn to Calvin. After drawing his card for turn, Calvin's going to play his land for turn as an Inspiring Vantage, which somehow comes into play untapped on turn 7. Then I'll cast Sorin Solemn Visitor. I have a response in Countervailing Winds, so I'll have to counter it unless he pays 2, which he can't. Then he's going to get into combat and attack me with 5 creatures, which is well more than enough to kill me. And he does have 3 life linkers, so he's going to go up to 44 life. I'll try to explain why they were so aggressive towards me in post, but for now just know that I'm dead. At that point, Ajdin's going to fetch with Marsh Flask, dropping down to 35, and he's going to get a basic plains. Then we'll head over to Ajdin's turn. Now Ajdin does have his work cut out for him, as he's aware of a cyclonic rift that is almost certainly coming. He's going to play Maul of the Skyclaves, triggering the Paladin to draw a card. Then it will automatically attach to Akiri, and he'll head to combat. He's going to attack Guy with Akiri, the Knight of the Wood Orchid, and the Skyclave Apparition. Then he's going to trigger Akiri, and we're going to be allowed to go to blocks. Guy's going to block the Skyclave Apparition and the Akiri, and then we go to first strike damage. That's going to kill the Brazen Borrower, and then Guy's going to take 2 total from the Knight of the White Orchid. Guy's going to float 7 here, losing 2 off Ancient Tomb and overload Cyclonic Rift. For what it's worth, Calvin does get the Spirit off of the Forbidden Orchard. We're going to clean up the board, and then Ajdin is going to have one more action for us. He'll tap for 2 white and cast Brought Back, which is going to get Skyclave Apparition. He's going to use that to target Guy's Survival of the Fittest. Guy responds by fetching, going down to 23 for a forest, and he activates Survival of the Fittest, discarding Aven Mind Sensor. With that, he's going to go get Priest of Titania and put it into his hand. And with nothing else, the Skyclave will exile the Survival of the Fittest, and will move right back over to Guy's turn after Ajdin discards. Now on the 8th turn cycle, Guy's going to tap for 5 and cast Chulane, losing 2 off Ancient Tomb. Then he will play that Priest of Titania, triggering the Chulane. With no other actions, we'll pass the turn over to Calvin. Calvin's going to have to try to play a little bit of catch up here. He's going to tap 2, losing 1 to Mana Confluence, to play Talisman of Hierarchy. Then I'll tap out for an Arcane Signet, and I'll tap out one more time for Vampire of the Dire Moon, triggering Edgar. All things considered, that's not a bad way to catch up from the Cyclonic Rift. Ajdin's going to play Basic Plains as his land for turn. Then I'll float 2 white and play Pure Steel Paladin. Then I'll tap for 1 colorless and play Shuko, triggering the Paladin. After that, he's going to tap for 3, and I'll play that Maul of the Skyclaves we all saw last turn. That's going to trigger the Paladin, and I'll draw a card. Then I'll be able to move those both over to his Skyclave Apparition and head into combat. He's going to attack Guy for 5. Guy's simply going to take it, and with nothing else to do in his combat phase, he'll tap 1 for the Giver of Runes and try to pass the turn to Guy. Guy's first going to use that Forbidden Orchard to cast Mystical Tutor. He'll give that token to Ajdin, and the Mystical is going to go find Finale of Devastation and add it to the top of Guy's library. After that, we're going to head straight back to Guy's turn. Guy's going to untap all of his mana and draw that Finale of Devastation. Then he'll tap for 3, playing a Mirror Entity, losing 2 to his Ancient Tomb and drawing a card off of Chulane. Then he'll activate Mirror Entity, making all of his creatures into 1/1 elves. He'll tap Priest of Titania to generate 4 green mana, and play Finale of Devastation for X equals 2. He's going to go search his library and get a Wirewood. Now that is going to have him returning an elf to his hand to untap another creature. What he's going to do is he's going to trigger the Chulane, return that Wirewood to his hand to untap Priest of Titania, and at this point he's basically demonstrating a loop. He's going to put that Wirewood back into play, and from that point he'll trigger Chulane and drop a basic forest as his land for turn. I'll let him explain from here.
I can tap this. So all my creatures are elves because of Mirror Entity. I can tap this for 5 green, use Wirewood Symbiote to return an elf I control in my hand to untap a creature. So each time I cast Wirewood Symbiote, I'll draw a card off of Chulane, untapping Priest of Titania. Eventually I can find my Eternal Witness to cast a big fat Finale of Devastation to kill you all.
That seems like game, boys. Game? Game? Wow. Good games. That game was pretty interesting to edit because when I was looking through the game, everything made sense to me, but then I tried to look at it from your perspective, the audience, and I realized that some things probably made no sense. Like, for instance, why was Gavi taken out so aggressively, even with Chulane, presenting pieces of a somewhat known combo? Survival of the Fittest should have been a giveaway. Let's go over how everyone's decks did. I'm going to start with some of the decks that performed not so well and lead into the decks that maybe performed very well or won the game. I want to start immediately with my deck because this wasn't obvious from the video, but my deck, this is my Gavi deck, the Cycling Matters deck, and this is a budget conscious deck. I wouldn't call it like a budget deck. This isn't like one of Mitch from Commander Quarters $50 decks, but it is on a budget of $200. Now, when you consider that seems like a pretty high price point for some people, but when you're an enfranchised Magic player, everyone else at the table is playing with like $1,000 plus decks. So that's just something to maybe keep in mind. I wanted to play it in this pod just because I thought it presented it's got an interesting line of gameplay that a lot of my other decks don't have, and you haven't seen it on the channel yet, but I uploaded a video going over my current Commander decks, and that was one of them. So I really wanted to just get it down Why was I killed so quickly? I had access to escape protocol, which is a big red flag in this deck, because when my deck wins, it actually does it off of the back of escape protocol. I'm not going to go over all of the combos possible, but there's like 3 creatures in the deck. Dockside Extortionist was actually in for this pod. Normally I keep it out because it brings me above budget, but this pod of decks was, you know, higher power level than what I was doing with Gavi. You got your Dockside Extortionist, you've got your Cloud of Fairies, and you have your Priest of Urabrask. And you can start to, over about half of the deck cycles has the cycling keyword. You can draw your whole deck and generate infinite mana very quickly. Now I didn't quite have it, I actually needed 2 more pieces, but they didn't know that. Calvin hasn't seen it yet, but both Guy and Ajdin have died to me going infinite with Gavi and like hitting him with a billion impact tremors, or like drawing my whole deck and like eventually playing Dranith Stinger and then killing him with Dranith Stinger triggers, which is, you know, whenever you cycle a card, you deal damage to each opponent. So they were wary of that, and I think they were also paying me back for a previous game. So keep that in mind. The Gavi deck curved out, I got punished, maybe unrightfully so, but also people will kill you, you know, using revenge as a reasoning for their crimes. Let's move over to who was next to me, Calvin. Calvin kept a very risky 1-land hand with Mana Confluence, but it was balanced because he was able to use that Chromox to, you know, he guaranteed came out of the gate with 3 mana on turn 1. So even though he didn't draw a second mana source for like, or technically his 4th mana source, but his second land drop till like turn 3 or 4, and because of that, his play was a little bit stunted, but thanks to what Edgar does out of the command zone, he was able to generate a ton of value, generating, you know, the 1/1 vampire tokens, along with his curve being reasonable, and the captivating vampire is what kept him in the game so long, because he had 2 ways to generate vampire tokens, and then captivating vampire was able to steal everyone's stuff. Guy played Chulane, and he actually didn't realize what Captivating Vampire did. He asked the question when he cast it, but he forgot, so that was a mistake from Guy. I just cast Gavi because I needed to cycle through cards, and I was kind of banking on that first cycle. I was like, maybe I can hit something like a, what's the name of the card? I can't think of it right now. It cycles, and then you get to stifle an ability. Nimble Obstructionist, I think that's the name of the card. I was hoping to hit something like that, but I didn't have it. I was also kind of hoping he'd think that I have it, but I was in a bad spot that game, so I shouldn't have played the Gavi, but I did. Captivating Vampire put Calvin really far ahead, and he actually cleaned up pretty well after the Cyclonic Rift, which we'll get to in a moment. I want to talk about Ajdin, because he was very irresponsible. He kept a no-land hand, and if he hadn't top decked that Plains, he would have been stunted very hard. I see why he kept it, because he had the Sword of the Animist, he had 2 0-drop mana rocks, and if he could just like get 1 more mana rock down to be able to turn that Mox Opal on, he would have been in the game. The problem is that Gavi deck only plays 34, 33 lands, so he was at like less than 50% to draw it off the first card at the top of his library, and those aren't very good odds. So I would have shipped that hand, but Ajdin obviously was rewarded. He drew the 1 land, which allowed him to use Sword of the Animist. Both him and Calvin were playing kind of at par with each other. They were both doing very powerful things. They were also very explosive. They both started with like 3 to 4 mana sources. Guy and his Chulane deck, Calvin alludes to this in the last game we had uploaded, the one that Calvin edited. He's like, so just so you know, that guy's gonna have a game with an explosive. Chulane wins out of nowhere. He does kind of win out of nowhere. Anyone who knows about the combo of like, what's the name, Wirewood Symbiote and Priest of Titania, the way that combo works with Chulane is like really cool. It's common knowledge amongst people who like, you know, understand combos in Commander. A lot of the Chulane decks have this combo built in. I don't know that Ajdin and Calvin saw it coming. I was out of the game, so I was able to pay full attention, and I kind of saw it coming as Guy started to tutor and he found the Finale of Devastation. Guy executed his game plan very well. I think that Guy should have seen maybe a little bit more pressure, as opposed to the last game we uploaded with him playing Chulane, where he should have seen less pressure. He should have seen more pressure in this game. But all things said, I think even if they tried to pressure Guy, his access to cards like Cyclonic Rift at a moment's notice would have kept him fully ahead in the game. And even though it seemed a little weird to pressure me, I think both Calvin and Ajdin made a decent choice, because my deck goes from dirtling to just winning the whole game and drawing the whole deck really quickly. And it's kind of hard to see when that's going to happen. But Ajdin has a rule, and it's if you see Escape Protocol, hit Adrian, and he's not wrong. That's kind of how the game went. Let me know what you guys thought. Again, I hope you guys are enjoying Calvin. I'm certainly enjoying having his help here on the channel. He's a fantastic video editor. I don't think he plugged his own stuff, but he also does Destiny content. I'll leave a link to that in the description for the few of you who maybe are into Magic the Gathering and Destiny. That's all I have for you guys today. Thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, I'll see you next time.